Dun, 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 dun. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a minute. Hey, Andrew.
Been too long.
It's been too long. We welcome to Maker That Money, the podcast where we talk about taking your passion project, maybe as a maker, and getting it to the next level, making a run at it. I am your host, Pooch of Repkord. With me today, as always, my trusty sidekick, Mr. Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good. I'm excited to be back at it. I've missed you all. Greetings to everybody that's joining us live in the chat. We had a heck of a June, Andrew. A lot of
Oh my
travel.
goodness.
We had Murph, which was exciting. That's the Midwest Rep Rap Festival. So if you're listening back to this and haven't heard of the Midwest Rep Rap Festival, we highly recommend checking it out. It's a very big 3D printer. It's like the mecca of 3D printing, right? In the
Oh yeah.
heartland where people
Yeah.
go and experience
The
awesome
heartland.
3D printing projects and whatnot. But that was fun. I also spent some time in the UK with our good friends over at E3D for the Sanjay Memorial. That was awesome. And sadly, I was no longer able to evade COVID, and I was out a week with that, which
Oh,
sucked. I know a lot of you
yep.
guys out there in you know the world have had to deal with it as well, and it's no fun. But thankfully, got through it, and it was rather mild. But it seems like it's everywhere these days. So
Yep.
you've been lucky though. You've evaded it, right? Up
Oh
until
yeah.
now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shoot, Murph, it looked like it spread everywhere. Somehow I got missed.
Yeah, it's amazing the way the immune system works and whatnot, isn't it?
Yep.
But
Yep.
today on the show, I want to talk about some happier things, some more
Oh
exciting
boy.
things. This is, if ever there was a topic, Andrew, for the maker community,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be this one, right? Because this is I think a lot of what we as makers get excited about, our ability to
Mm-hmm.
come up with creative, inexpensive solutions to problems. And when you talk about how that applies to business, that's a huge potential leg up, right? I mean,
Oh yes.
the advantage of not having to just pay for everything, and there
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of stuff that as you establish and grow a business that you have to pay for. But
Exactly.
the ability to come up with creative solutions to save yourself money, time, or both is just so exciting and critical, and all these things. And so today, I really want to hopefully share some stories, come up with some
Mm-hmm.
ideas, and talking about like how do we do more with less, right?
Yep.
Um, so important, so important.
Oh yes.
And it to and the way I always like to look at it is like we need to use our mental fuel, to really help drive the engine that is the business. And I think a lot of times that might sound like a silly, obvious
Mm-hmm.
thing to say, but when you get involved in the whole thing, you get moving. We don't often
Mm-hmm.
take time to step back and brainstorm, what the right solution, or
Oh,
what
absolutely.
a creative way to attack a problem might be. We think business is just going to require throwing money at the problem, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
always the case. And we don't always have that luxury, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're both
Yep.
bootstrapped, meaning we both kind of funded our own thing and started from nothing. And obviously, there's different approaches to starting a
Mm-hmm.
company.
Yep.
Um, I'm a big advocate for the bootstrap for multitude of reasons, but it's that's nothing against anybody that wants to go out and seek investment or get venture funding or any of that stuff. Certainly, like
Yep.
I said, more than one way to approach it. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is it you're thinking of when you hear the phrase "do more with
Mm-hmm.
less"? What as a maker does that mean to you, and what maybe strategies have you had, and can you share any
Sure.
stories with us about getting your start being creative that way?
Sure. Yeah. So, it's interesting, right? Because there's a part of me that's at odds with another part of me, and that is the engineer in me who wants to design the perfect system. So, like how it should be designed or developed or produced in a real world scenario. Like, we're thinking a consumer product, right?
Okay.
I wanted the mentality of do it right the first time. But there's also the part of
Good
me
luck.
who's like, how do we just get it good enough to work? And those two are constantly at odds because on one hand, doing it right typically means spending a lot more time, more energy,
Yeah.
maybe buying specific custom parts, or like having custom engineered things, again, really diving down that rabbit hole. Whereas getting it done, just to work, I mean, we're talking hot glue and popsicle sticks here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're fancy.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So craft paper and Elmer's glue. What can you do with what you have, and it's always about just being, I guess, creative. And there's creative aspects in both elements. And I think the thing that's hard for engineer makers, so these are makers that are more on the engineering side, is that it's very easy to get led astray going down that rabbit hole.
Oh man.
uh
It really is.
yeah, and then for the other crafty types, perhaps this is where it's really cool because you can make something work good enough that might not be a perfect solution, but hey, if it works, you can't really knock it, right? um
Yeah, if it works, it's
so
not wrong. I mean, I say it all the time. What's that saying? Good enough for government work or whatever. We're not in the government sector and stuff, but you're constantly. I find myself saying that a lot, just because. And I'm with you. I'm the same way. Like
Mhm.
it's not even an issue of perfectionism. It's just that you're constantly weighing the a stitch in time saves nine kind of thing, where it's like if I don't do this
Mhm.
right in the first place, it can be more painful to me
Oh,
in the
yes.
long run, right?
Mhm.
But I just need to get this thing off the ground, right? And so how do you
Mhm.
make that evaluation? And that's not always cut and dry, right?
Oh, it's not. Well, and so makers that have bootstrapped, or not even bootstrapped, but turned their idea into a business, it's very easy, I think, to get caught up in this I guess runaway, sort of positive feedback loop where you that things have caused you problems in the past, because as we grow our businesses, there are always things that happen, and that cause problems. And it's like, okay, well, I don't want to experience these pains again. So now you're like, okay, well, I'm
Right.
going to start, investing more time or more energy to do it right that first time, so that it doesn't bite me in the end anyways. And that sets you up for this really, I guess, troublesome kind of experience, where now if you're not careful, you're going to constantly look just to, oh, well, I need to, throw money at the problem, or I need to do this
Mm-hmm.
in order to
Mm-hmm.
solve this problem.
Yeah.
And you slowly break away from, I need to just get this thing done and out the door, and then iterate afterwards. And it's a trap if you're
It's
not
a
careful.
trap. It sure can be. It sure can be. I want to pause for a second, give a shout out to everybody that's joining us live in the chat. You guys, we record this every Friday. Well, what we try to do every Friday. June was a bit of an exception, but 9 a.m. Pacific. If you want to join us live, if you're listening back and you want to chime in on the chat, we've got a lot of great commentary, a lot of awesome people out there. Thank you so much for feeding that stuff, and we will get to some of that very shortly. Also, today, I'm not going to let you guys off the hook. We got our call-in number, right here number.
Yes.
It's a link and stuff like that. And I really want you guys to dig deep and just spend, 5 minutes and call in and share a story about something you creative as a maker did that helped you solve a problem that you were proud of, that didn't require spending a lot of money or time on something. Because I mean, that's the energy I think that drives a lot of
Hmm.
us, right?
Oh,
And I
absolutely.
love hearing it. It's like those stories are the things that inspire me to be more creative and more thoughtful as well. So I hope you guys are feeling brave. It's super simple. You don't show up at all. It's just audio. You can use your phone. You can use your computer. All that stuff. So plug for the call in line. We'd love to talk to you. We operators. are standing by, as we like to say. So there's that. But to get back to what you're saying, right? Like the whole balancing of
Mm-hmm.
the how do I do it right and how do I just get it out the door
Mm-hmm.
is just a nonstop thing that's
Mm-hmm.
in your face as a business
Yep.
especially. So do you have any tips and tricks or criteria, or what is it that help you make that evaluation, or is it a gut feel for you?
So a lot of times it's a gut feel.
Mm,
But there are, and I'll say this, to be again quite frank, like we get it wrong here at Gloop all the time.
mm,
For the past couple of years, we've been stuck where we have these really cool things that we're working on. We might link some, or we might show some, upcoming products, or we might send some samples out to people, and they're like super excited. But yet you still don't see us actually producing that, and it's we very quickly got caught into a trap of, well, if we're going to do it, we want to do it right. We strive to have this super high quality product, but what we forgot was kind of our roots. And
mm,
it's frustrating because it's like, well, wait a second, our roots are actually what allowed us to get to where we were, and instead of putting all of this energy front loading, right, if we get something that's just good enough out, then we can iterate upon it afterwards.
mhm.
And it there should be better checks and balances. And I'll be the first to say that I don't even really know what the how you even go about creating those.
Yeah.
But I can say that if you find yourself asking questions of, okay, well, how could I do this better, or what could I do to make this better, and you find you could very easily start this creeping elegance, as I'll call it,
Ha.
where you start it,
I
you
like
start
that.
small in this like scope creep, and you want this elegant solution. You had something that worked, but now you're trying to make it better, just slightly better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And diminishing returns start coming after that.
Well,
So
I think a lot of that just comes with time and learning to control your urge to just try to swing for the fences every time, right? Like I always like to
Mhm,
say, like when you're getting started, especially, your job is to just string together base hits. Okay, like
mhm,
find something that is
mhm,
working. So a lot of it, to take a step back even further, is like finding your voice, finding your space, right? Because what you start out with as the business and what you
mhm.
ultimately become may not be even remotely close, right? Sometimes it
Yep.
takes a couple of attempts to find a product that resonates, or that's something that's unique enough, or you're not competing with others, or just something that you thought was useful, that may or may not be, or maybe you were ahead of its time, or maybe you're having issues just getting the message out and shouting above all the noise. Lord knows there's any
Mhm,
number of challenges out there. But it all comes down to, and I think CRS1, I think it's Chris. Apologize
mhm.
to you in the chat. He has a fantastic comment here, and he goes, one of the biggest problems for makers is choosing between building solutions and buying solutions, right?
Mhm.
Money, cash, is the lifeblood of business. It is a
Yep.
finite resource for pretty much most of us. And so, deciding what you're going to do with those things, and where you're going to start, uh, are,
Mhm.
are very different, right? Because you're going to need it to not just maybe buy inventory, but pay rent or pay employees or
Yep.
any, I mean, just tons of expenses out there, right? And
Mhm.
so how are you strategizing? What's going to balance the revenue and the expenses, and what's a reasonable amount of runway? I mean, there's so many questions. I can share an anecdote personally from my start. I'll just kind of let you guys know what I started with as an influx for Repkord, and what the idea for the business originally was, and maybe you'd be willing to do the same. If you don't want to talk
Mhm.
dollar figures, that's fine.
Sure.
I don't say this again to I prefer transparency. So this isn't meant to be
Sure.
a brag, and I understand everybody has different tolerances and finances to pull from. I'll just share that I started with $20,000 of seed capital, was what I was willing to take out of my personal savings to invest and give myself a runway. And I started out just on Amazon doing white label, filament, nozzles, just accessories, stuff like that. Not very exciting.
Mhm.
Had moderate success with it in the first year. Learned a
Mhm.
lot about Amazon, learned a lot about other stuff, but ultimately was not where my passion was and is not at all my focus now. Um,
Mhm.
was that enough? Was it too much? Like, could I have done more with less? Probably. But I think a lot of that was just kind of a round number that I was willing to stake as a starting
Yep.
point. A lot of you guys might think, well, I don't have that, and we're going to talk about that in a second. What is comfortable? What is a reasonable amount? What you need? Because there are plenty of people that literally start with zero. And
Mhm.
I can't imagine. I mean, I don't think you can really truly start with zero. You have to have something.
No, you're starting with your own, personal capital, if you will, your time invested,
Sweat
right?
equity, I like to call it. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. For Gloop, we were, I think we talked about this before. We're somewhere around $5,000 what we had when we started. Now we were a little bit different, right? Because we did a Kickstarter, and that got us roughly $8,000 in essentially what would call pre-orders. So that influx of cash helped us, buy the reaction vessels and the necessary equipment to really scale up production, pretty early on.
Mm,
Now, that being said, we didn't have to be successful on the Kickstarter to actually launch the products. We had the means of doing that off of our own kind of personal investments that we, had put into into just seeing if this was going to be something. And that's the beauty of this, where we looked at it as like, we had a couple $1,000s each, and the other Andrew and I, and we're like, let's throw it in together and let's see if we can make something that is interesting. It was very low risk because we lose a couple $1,000s. Okay, at the end of the day, you could probably make that back pretty quickly, depending on what you do for a living, that sort of stuff. But
mm.
for us, it was more so, what could we do to just see the bare minimum that would turn into a potential business. And so we started with, okay, let's obviously develop the product. Let's kind of get it good enough. From there, it's like, okay, well, we need to buy the domain names and some web hosting, that sort of stuff, put it up on a website.
Right.
And this is where we started investing a lot of time. For us, we actually invested a lot of time versus dollars. This was a product that we, could make ourselves for relatively cheap, to buy the necessary reagents in order to run the reactions
Mm-hmm.
in small quantities. It wasn't too expensive, about, a couple grand again out of that budget.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of that money was really just spent towards getting everything, like, the photos, the labels, all of that stuff to populate a website to
Right.
then,
Right.
put up.
Right.
And so we really, just, I guess, capitalize on our time and our ability to invest, that time into the business without a need for a return.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
s-
Well,
so
and you're gonna you're gonna have to crack a few eggs, right, to make that
yep.
omelet, and a lot of times, like the amount of time it's gonna take you, be
Hmm.
prepared is gonna be in the years,
Yep.
time frame, right, to like really get
Yep.
into the black, as we like to say on the accounting structure. Like we didn't make anything in the first 3 years probably of Repkord, because everything just got reinvested and rolled in, and I was doing it as a side hustle, and so I still had to have my other job, and so that's always a challenge too, because your focus is pulled in multiple directions. You've got to still make money, your livelihood, pay your
Hmm.
bills, and all that stuff. So that's the flip side of the bootstrap, is you aren't able to just dive straight in and focus all the time, and making that leap is
Hmm.
incredibly scary, when depending on the circumstances of your life and all that
Yep.
as well. But back to what you're saying, I think a lot of it comes down to defining, like, what is the minimum viable product. So we call MVP,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Um, and I think that's a good place for a lot of people to start, right?
Hmm.
Not you talked about this at the top of the show. Don't get sucked into the, how do I make this thing the best ever? We've talked about in the past, shiny object syndrome with Dave Randolph,
Hmm.
all that stuff. Look back on that, by the way, if you want to know what shiny object syndrome is. We talked about that a few episodes back. But that distraction is one of our, the flip sides of that coin. As being a maker, we want to just kind of keep iterating and perfecting.
Yep.
Minimum viable product is not something that I think comes inherently easily to us, right? But it is critical, I think, to getting some traction and success, business. Like, you have to hold back. You have to focus your fire on getting the thing off the ground. Don't spread yourself too thin by trying to do too much all at once, especially given that if you don't have cash to throw at the money, you have time. You only have time, and
Yep.
there's only so much of that, and you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
If you that's the risk
Well,
of that, I would say.
you're absolutely right, and this kind of feeds right into the other part of Chris's statement that as makers we don't value our time correctly, and that is absolutely true. But it I think it really comes down to learning to evaluate where is your time best spent, instead of necessarily, and yes, this is essentially valuing your time correctly, but there are many businesses out there where the CEO or just the general operators or owners were like, oh, it's not worth my time to do this. I'm just going to throw money at the problem, where that might be a good solution for their business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for us, what we found is there are actually key moments to our that I think we can define to our success, that where we valued our time less than the money that we had. That money was so critical to us that we had to spend every dollar, maybe even every cent, correctly.
Right.
And where we had a lot more time than money, we would freely chase projects or do by hand what wouldn't seem viable, but it allowed us to reinvest that very limited capital. And to start, right, we actually printed all of our labels for all of our bottles by hand on a printer.
Oh,
We then
wow.
laminated them, and then we cut them out on a Cricut, and then we hand labeled every bottle. We did this for almost a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's what
a
it takes
huge time
sometimes.
investment.
Sure.
Huge time investment. But what it allowed us to do is if we were to go and buy labels, they were like 50-60 cents a label. We could get the cost of labels, now not including our time, down to around 5 or 6 cents.
Right.
So, an order of magnitude reduction in price, and it allowed us to quickly iterate those labels. So as we made changes,
Right.
we could quickly just print new labels, right? Not a
Right.
big deal.
Yeah.
And that was critical because I remember specifically, being able to upgrade, right, our machine to now start cutting out, instead of buying pre-cut Viton rubber seals for our caps that were incredibly expensive. We could order sheets of Viton and then cut them ourselves. And it was that allowed us to get more money, right, back into our pockets to reinvest further.
Right.
And it's these little things that you do that can add up over time.
Absolutely. Where it gets challenging is there is absolutely a point where that'll flip, right? A lot of people might
Oh,
listen to that.
yes.
You were hand cutting your labels? Like, really? I mean, was it that? Were you saving that much money from that and stuff like that? And the answer for a lot of people is like sometimes yes. Like if you don't have, can I ask you what so you mentioned you did the Kickstarter. Did you and other Andrew come out of pocket personally with any funding as well, or did you only fund off the Kickstarter?
No, yeah, that was so that came out of it was around $5,000 we put in before the Kickstarter.
Okay.
And then afterwards we continued. The number's probably somewhere closer to 20 now. Like I don't have exact accounting on
That's
who's
pretty
given what,
good.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
most of it has been, again, really tried to focus on doing this thing bootstrap wise. The money that comes in, we literally count it, we figure out exactly where we can spend it, we talk about it, we plan, and then we actually pull the trigger. Very
Sure.
rarely do we impulse buy things,
Yeah.
without some thinking and some planning and some, discussions.
I
So
should hope not. Impulse and business are not a good mix a lot of the time. Well, it depends on what you're talking about, but yes, in terms of buying things, yeah, no, impulse buy.
yeah.
And I'll be lying if I said, I didn't get excited about a piece of equipment that I wanted, and then I had to step back and be like, wait, why do I want this? Is it because I actually have a business use for it, or because Pooch wants to play
It's
with
a want.
new toy, right?
Yeah.
So checking yourself, and you're lucky you've got a partner that can kind of keep that check and balance in place for you. Obviously, that's that's another way to do more with less. Like you can do more when you have more people, right? So a lot of
Social
times
capital.
people will, social capital. I think Chris in the chat, and again I keep calling him Chris, but I don't, I'm not entirely sure. CRS1 in the chat, mentions it's all about allocating capital in all of its forms, whether it's money, time, experience, knowledge, social, etc. I was going to say, I think when you're first getting started, you really need to take a minute and take inventory of what your skill sets are. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses, right? SWOT analysis. You guys ever hear of a SWOT analysis? SWOT. I almost didn't spell SWOT right. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Okay. And I think it's a really simple exercise. I love it. Get a whiteboard, get a piece of paper, get whatever you've got, and just write that down so you can see. Like a lot of times it's just kind of owning it, right? You may know all of this inherently, but writing down what are your strengths and how do you leverage that, right? So maybe you've got web design skills. Maybe you're a great salesperson, right? Maybe, and by identifying those strengths and those weaknesses, you can start to see where your value is and where maybe that time expenditure is worth it and where it isn't, right? So it's a little bit of organization, guys, goes a long way. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if you guys actually ever did that. I like doing it from time to time, and I like updating it from time to time because I feel like that changes.
It does. Yeah, and so that's something that we haven't done necessarily a personal SWOT analysis, but we we actually won a startup competition, and the
Nice.
startup competition that we won. So we've won actually a few of them. The first one that we won was Arch Grants. It was it's kind of a local thing here to St. Louis. It's a global startup competition where startups. There's about a couple thousand applicants each year. They all are competing for a few select spots to win $50,000 in non-dilutive, investment that's paid out over a year. And so we were like, hey, again, bootstrapping here. We don't have a whole lot of cash. We're profitable. We don't need the Arch grant, but let's go ahead and look and see how could we be scrappy? How could we be creative? Maybe we can apply to some of these, these competitions and see if we win. Yes, it's a time investment again, where we're like, well, if we invest our time in doing this and it results in $50,000, that's going to be, a significant payoff. But there are other things that came with that: pro bono services, connections, everything else that we couldn't exactly equate to a value. But the most important thing that I would say that came out of that competition was our ability to create a business plan and literally strategize and formulate exactly what we were, what 3D Gloop was, what the team was, where we were going, where we were heading, our competition, everything. And it was because of that literally paid back in spades. Like, so much good has come from that exercise alone that it literally led us to win 2 other startup competitions later on with even less time investment. Don't get me wrong, there was still time investment, but being able to take what we've created there and say, well, hey, this is our strength as you're talking about it, and these are our weaknesses. This is where we could use your help. This is why we're applying to these startup competitions.
Fantastic.
It was just it's a really good pitch, and it's a really good story. And people, these competition, judges are like, this is awesome, this is cool. They just sensed something different, right? And I think it's I think it's important to do that. So many people undervalue creating a business plan, and I, for the longest time, undervalued it. Like I had a previous startup.
Same. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I had a previous startup. I hated when people told me, "Oh, have you created a business plan?" I'm like, "You don't need a dang business plan.
Well,
like, come on." Like,
to be fair, I don't think you need a business plan the way that the traditional MBA would think of a business plan.
Sure.
Okay. It doesn't need to be a 50-page, deck of sorts. Like it can literally, honestly, I would start with, what is your elevator pitch? Right? Like if you can't refine down to like what you do, I get people asking me all the time, what do you do? What is Repkord? And it's like, it has taken me years to distill that down into an elevator pitch, guys. For those not familiar with the term, in the amount of time you have to ride in an elevator with somebody else, can you explain what it is that you do? So a minute, and again, it's one of those things that sounds silly, but it's like it's the same thing with mission statements and all of these things that are just like, I don't need that. You don't really for the day-to-day, but it will help direct your efforts. It will help you start to be analytical about who you are, what your goals are, right? So I don't think a little, time and energy spent writing down. Maybe start with like a business plan in a single page or a paragraph or something, right? Just some guideline of what you're trying to do. And don't worry if that's not what you end up doing. Like, do not be afraid to pivot. You haven't failed. Like the only time you fail is when you give up, right? Like so many amazing companies got their start doing something that is nothing related to what they do now, right? Wasn't it like I'm a big advocate, guys, of reading and learning and podcasts and stuff like that. So you and I both love Jim Collins. He's done a ton of amazing books. If you're into that kind of thing, audiobooks and stuff, check out Good to Great, Built to Last. And there's tons of others and stuff too. We could go on recommendations there, but he talks about, I think it's in Built to Last, like 3M, big empire and stuff. I think didn't they get their start in something like sandpaper or something completely or mining equipment. I can't remember the details of it.
I think it was mining equipment or industrial abrasives. Yes.
And then they kind of got some focus into the, that, but not they do everything now. They do adhesives, they do all kinds of stuff. They're an empire and stuff like. So just because you set out, same thing, like I think they talk about Hewlett Packard too, and like,
and they didn't even have a plan.
Right,
they
didn't even have a plan.
Cool stuff. Literally, they formed their company saying, we don't know what we want to do. We just want to do something cool. Basically, is what they said.
Which is just nuts when you think about it, right? It's like, hey, we're some cool guys. I mean, that's kind of, again, that goes back to the maker, spirit of things. Like, what? You're cool and I'm cool. We love doing cool stuff. Let's make a business somehow.
And that's what you just highlighted there. The reason why this was a case study is because Hewlett Packard was really it was about getting the right people involved. It wasn't about the actual business. It was having the right people and building out those skill sets in order to make something successful.
Yep.
So
I think this might dovetail in interestingly. So in the chat, Michael Tech, or Mayhall, I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly, but he said he's interested in getting a start. Was thinking about getting a booth at IRF. Which is coming up. That's the East Coast Rep Rap Festival. So we talked about Midwest Rep Rap Festival. There's one in the East Coast in Bel Air, Maryland, coming up in October 8-9. Save the date on your calendars, guys. It'll be worth checking out. And he goes, how do you know when it's time to start doing a booth? Well, a lot of that for me is like no time like the present. If you've got an idea and something that you want to share, do it. Also, IRF, I can tell you right now, they have free booth space for people that want to get their start. So if you're wanting to start a business, and I can't speak for this year because I know it's been very popular, so I don't know if they still have availability, but if you need it, you can reach out, you can DM me later. I can put you in touch with the organizers, or you can reach out to them directly. They're very responsive on Twitter and whatnot. Just tag them. See if they still have stuff available. And they are very big on advocating for people that want to get their start. That is a fantastic way to just get out in front of the community, talk a lot of, if you have a brand that you've started, like I cannot advocate for that enough. We talk about strategy for doing more with less.
Mm-hmm.
Being part of the community, participating in the
Yep.
community is so critical, right? Getting that name out there, getting established, having conversations, sharing ideas and stuff like that. Go to your local maker space. Go to look at meetup.com, events that are in your
Yep.
area, and network, because that's where a lot of these ideas come. That's where you meet people that you can potentially partner with. If you don't have a lot of money, it's okay if you don't have a lot of money, if you can find a way to get other people excited to work with you, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And I think trade shows is a great way to do it. You mentioned a really good one that I hadn't considered, which is, there's a ton of grant money and programs out there. Like, do a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of research. Like, there are literally entities that want to give money to startups.
So yeah, exactly. So here in Illinois, there's the Small Business Development Association, right? Well, I think that's a federally run program. But here in Illinois, there are local chapters all throughout. And what we did was, we found a posting saying, "Hey, we have $10,000. We're going to give it away as a startup competition." And this is again so perfect for people who are trying to get started with something, because all it takes is just a little bit of time investment from you saying, "This is my idea, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to build it, this is where I want to be, this is how I'm going to make money." It's again very simple stuff. And you pitch your idea, and $10,000 to a new business is phenomenal, right?
Oh my
Not to
gosh. Yeah.
mention all of the social capital that comes with that. So the connections and everything else, just it keeps paying back.
Which I would
Even if
argue
you
is
don't
actually
win,
the more
it's
valuable
more,
part.
yeah,
You're
more
right. The,
valuable.
the cash is great.
Hmm.
Don't get me wrong, but
Hmm.
over time those relationships and those connections pay way
Yep.
more dividends. You
Like
if you can
now we
hang,
have
you
a
got to hang in though.
really Exactly. We have a really good relationship with the, SBDC here. And
Small business
they
development
yeah,
consortium, corporate,
something, yeah,
something like
yeah, it's
that.
something
Okay,
like that. Yeah,
okay,
I don't remember. I just know that they're called
collective.
SBDC. So
Okay, all
yeah,
right.
so but they are amazing. And the team there is they just they're happy to work with us too, and they're excited. And when new opportunities come up, they're literally emailing us all the time saying, "Hey, there's this new opportunity coming up. Like, this is a reverse career fair where the businesses come and they try and woo the like graduates or undergraduates or whatever to coming and working with them." And it's like, okay, well, hey, that might actually be cool because we can network with other smart people
Mhm.
that might have something to do with 3D printing, but we can actually leverage them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing. And all of this we wouldn't actually have been like been able to participate in or even know of if we didn't know where to look. And
Right.
these connections are just so valuable. Again, even if you don't win, use it as an experience so that you can tailor what you've did before to what you're going to do hopefully next time and get better, right? Don't
Yeah,
give up,
yeah.
just pivot, just keep iterating. um
Listen, guys,
so
your job as a startup is to survive long enough to succeed.
yes.
Like, that is
Yes.
literally it, which is such a weird thing to say, right? It is such a war of attrition, right? Like,
Hmm.
and the dollars are your soldiers, right? So it's like you just
Yep.
need to survive long enough to win, and if you that's really what any
I
successful
love that
business
analogy.
has in
Yeah.
common, is that they were
Mhm.
just so unbelievably relentless. And let
Mhm.
me tell you, I've said this before. It's one of my favorite quotes, but a buddy of mine, the very successful business guy, said, like, as a business owner, you have to learn to love the taste of your own blood, because you are going to get beaten and bloodied and battered. I mean, we were talking this morning just before the show.
Mhm.
Every
Yep.
day there's just something that just wants to knock you down, and
Yep.
and you just want to, this isn't even worth it. But the truth is, you take a step back, you sleep on it, you whatever, and you say, like, these are all solvable problems. You solve enough
Yep.
problems, you get to go home.
Yep.
Survive long enough, and you get to retire, hopefully, with something that you built. Um, yeah, yeah. That gross
Yeah.
oversimplification, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what's at the heart of it. Okay, listen. It's story time, guys. That means we're calling you out. Call in,
Yes.
share a story with us. I know there's plenty of you in there. See, Nero, I see you. I see a lot of people we haven't heard from before. Share a story of a time you got. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to have a business. It can just be a creative solution that you were able to leverage from your skill set as a maker to solve a problem, save yourself some money, save yourself some time. We want to hear about it. Suck it up. Call in. Be brave. Share. What other stories do you have while we're waiting for people
Oh
to
gosh.
gain some bravery, Andrew? What other stories do
Well,
you have about creative solutions that have gotten you where you are?
Well, yeah. So I was talking about how we were cutting the labels by hand, right? And
Yep.
then saving up so that we could eventually get a better machine, so that we can then start cutting our chemical resistant Viton rubber for our seals, and then eventually again saving up so that we can we knew we had we used to source metal closures, brush top closures for our bottles,
Okay.
from National Novelty Brush Company, and
Mm.
they they were cheap rubber cement style brush tops. They sucked. They constantly leaked. We constantly had issues with them, and we knew that at some point we had to get over it. We had to get our own caps, but we knew that that was so expensive.
Right.
All right, to have an injection mold made, it was like $12,000.
Oh
That's
god,
just the
molding is
mold.
so
and
expensive.
and
Yeah.
so this is again where we're like, okay, well, how can we just keep the business alive, so that we can eventually afford that injection mold, right?
Mm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
it was just literally, it was all about, okay, well, trying to find different ways to close the cap, trying to find, like, we tried 3D printed torque wrenches. We tried 3D, how do we store the bottles, for long-term storage, in
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
refrigerators, that sort of stuff, just to make for sure that we could keep inventory, but also at the same time give it the best possible chance, putting inert gas into the reaction vessels. We tried all of these things, and all of that went into saving up enough to get to the point where we could get our caps injection molded.
Just
And
get to mold.
once
Just get to
just
molding.
get to mold. And
Okay.
then once we knew that, like, we knew that molding wasn't even the end solution, because molding was only going to get us a thermoplastic, and we needed essentially a phenolic material.
Mm.
But we knew that if we get the mold and we get the cheaper injection molded pieces made, then the next time when we go to order, we can then say, hey, let's modify the mold now, and let's get the phenolic material ready, so that then we can actually solve this problem once and for all. And so we're not there yet, but gosh dang it, we're so dang close. It's right there. But
You'll get it. You know
I
you're good.
can't
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't tell you how how many little things that we've stepped through. So with our new caps, right? We've done 6 different seals, just to make them seal better each time. This
Mm-hmm.
was again
Mm-hmm.
kind of, okay, hey, this solution, now one of those, most recently, we had a misstep, and some of the bottles are now exploding and shipping. And it's like, okay,
Ugh.
well, we know that
Body
that's not
blow.
the solution. Yeah, yeah. But it's
Gut
those
shot.
little things where we would have been so focused on, okay, do we have the ability, like, to change the seals? Do we have the ability to change the manufacturer or the material? For the longest time, again, we've been still cutting our seals, our wiper seals, on a Cricut. But
Mm.
now, for the first time, we actually will have injection molded seals that are made out of a thermal set fluoroelastomer rubber.
Yeah.
So finally, after four years and some change, have we finally sourced, parts where we don't have to do anything to. We just get
I
them
mean,
in and we assemble it.
that's the hustle though. You gotta hustle your way there if you don't
hmm
have the
But
ability to just buy it outright. You know?
and so we had an opportunity to have the seals cut for us, a couple years ago, by a die cutting machine. But still, we could produce them ourselves for cheaper. And it was one of those things where, like, okay, well, yeah, we're not really valuing our time correctly, but it allows us to save just, a little bit, 30 cents each cap or something like that. I think it was even less. It was like 20 cents each bottle. But
Yeah.
over the course of, a couple of years where you sell thousands upon thousands of bottles, it adds up. And so we
Oh my
literally just
gosh.
we set up an account. We're like, okay, for the money we're going to save, it's going to go into that account. We're not going to touch it. We're just going to set it in there, and we're going to build it over time until the point where it finally makes sense that we can then jump and we can get the injection molded seals now, for our bottles. But had we not made the original investment in getting the new upgraded machine to cut the original, Viton rubber, to begin with, who knows where we would be, right? So you got to backtrack it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You know what's interesting to me about that is that that's almost a benefit a lot of the times that you're forced down that road. And let me elaborate on what I mean. That if you just had the money from the jump, if you were venture funded or whatever, right? Like,
yep,
when it's not your money,
yep,
you're not motivated to save and to be creative in the same way. And so it's just like your burn rate, you're spending cash, throwing money at problems that you think you have that may not be there. This goes back to the MVP, minimum viable product. You need to prove out that you have a viable product before you start throwing a ton of resources at it, right? And so you earn that right, and you have established, like, there is enough demand here to warrant this, and we will come up with a solution. I deal with that all the time. Like, I could be die cutting a lot of our sheet stuff. We could be doing, packaging that way and all that stuff, but I don't do it intentionally because I embrace that pivot, right? I need to know that if this dries up or if this isn't as successful as I think it's going to be, I'm not out $20,000. I'm only out, my time. And again, there's that balancing, but you know what I mean? Like, your reward is proving out the model and then spending the money. And it's so lost in this day because, like, all the sexy headlines out there in the world are about how much money people raise to start a business, and we've lost our way with the fundamentals because money has gotten so cheap. And by that I mean, like, the cost of borrowing money and being able to start a multi-billion-dollar business with somebody else's cash. It's just it's gross in a lot of ways, I guess. To me, it's not. I mean, it's not. It's just a different way to do it. And
well, yeah. So many founders really think that all of their problems can be solved by money, when in reality, most of their problems can be solved by just thinking through them
with ingenuity. That's exactly right. And that is where we as makers need to recognize and excel and leverage this more than this. But it's lost on a lot of people because it takes a lot more work, right? You gotta put in the work. And I think a lot of people are just looking for, of course, I would love to play with house money, right? It's like, it's not, but that's not a path to a successful business. Think about how many companies fold, especially when they're young. It's a first venture. I mean, venture capitalists can speak. Like, what are they doing well if they're, like, successful in 1 of 30 ventures or 1 in 20 something
like that?
Yeah, which is a terrible, return rate. But again, they're just looking at the aggregate. Throw money at the problem. And hopefully one of them strikes it big, right? And then you're doing great. Great.
Well, I had a previous venture, right? And that previous startup, we raised like $2.5 million, and we threw money at problems instead of actually being super creative ourselves, trying to come up with, ingenuitive ways to save money.
Down this road.
Later in the company's life, we started doing that, but it was a little bit too little, too late. And it didn't work. It didn't work out in the end. Which is, again, one of the catalysts for why we've done things here the way that we have, is just figuring out ways that work so that we can get to the next problem.
Yeah.
So
yeah. keep keep getting to those next problems. James Blackburn in the chat, bootstrap or bust is my policy. I'm with you, brother. If you aren't willing to throw your own skin and sweat and cash into the game, like, is it really worth doing? That's the question that I often ask. Again, it's not 100% of the time. There's plenty of success stories out there. There are plenty of people that have moderate success, but then fly too close to the sun, because there is that tendency. We talk about this as you go. It's like, okay, now I got to invest a little bit more. Now I got to invest a little bit more in the next thing. And every step along the way, you're probably adding a zero to, your expenses and your revenues, and the stakes are higher, right? Like,
Yep.
It's almost like it's like a sick gambling addiction in a way, where you start at the $5 table, and if you're lucky, you get to the high roller table, but you can go bankrupt every step along the way, right? And you survive long enough to get out of the casino.
Yep, that's it.
Maybe that's not the best analogy, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
And I don't know. I'll share. Let me share a story, if I may.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
Yeah, of just kind of some creative. So first, I want to step back and I want to shout out Mitch on Twitter, the Mitch22. If you're not following him, you should check him out. But he's known for his backpack 3D printer he walks around with, the Delta at Murph. Very creative individual. But he had a tweet earlier in the week that actually inspired the topic of doing more with less, because he was just struggling with, like, how do I find a space, for what I'm doing, like, I don't have the money to just like buy a facility outright or rent a facility. A lot of rental places won't allow me to just put my shop equipment in there. I had a chat with him offline this morning, and he said actually just ended up renting an entire house that had a garage so that I could put my gear in it. And I know Joel Telling has done similar so that he could have a studio. I think there are creative solutions out there. They kind of thought outside the box more. Like, maybe this isn't a traditional business space, but there's opportunity out there if you look for it. Get on Craigslist, find somebody that might be renting. Around here, there's a ton of people with barns that they're not using, and so if you can find one that's powered, and you can make it, get your start somewhere, and don't throw a ton of cash at the problem, right? So Mitch kind of got my wheels turning and got me thinking about my own stories. One of the things that I've done, and as part of my hustle, was like, okay, I want equipment for specific projects or specific products that I'm trying to build and sell. A lot of you guys know that I am super big advocate of belt printing. I love belt printing. I love automation systems, right? I like, we talk all the time about how custom is, and when I say we, I mean in their shop, like, custom is expensive. Spending the time to quote individual onesie twosie. I don't do one-off products. I like to focus on how do I invest a bunch of time and energy in creating a system that can then create income for me repetitively over time.
Sure.
And the best way to do that in mind, but like, I love manufacturing for that reason, like creating product to drive the business, and then filling in gaps perhaps with keeping the machines busy by farming it out for print service or whatever is a great way to do it. But I like belt printing. And so I said, okay, I think with 10 belt printers, I could do X, right? No, that's going to cost me 10 grand if if I'm just paying retail. Why don't I hit up Creality and say, like, I'll resell belt printers. How can I get the best rate possible for these? And they said, yeah, we're happy to have you be a reseller and stuff. And so, like, I ended up getting 100 of them, which required a huge investment, go to the bank, getting a loan and stuff like that, and then sell off all the ones that I didn't want to keep to fund the ones that I did want to keep, right?
There you go.
Scary, because lots of money. Thankfully, they all end up selling. We ended up creating a couple products around it, because I love creating products that solve a problem for me. And if that is the case, then it's probably solving a problem for 10, 15, 100,000 other people out there. We've made more money selling upgrade kits and enhancements and stuff to the thing than the original printers and stuff now. And I, had no expectation of that, but it's been great because it's been driving my own innovation. It's been making us create stuff that has become more and more useful for us, that then we're in turn able to leverage in a different way. And so thinking outside the box in terms of, like, how can I get what I need how can I get other as silly as that sounds, how can I get other people to pay for it? How can I do stuff? So again, it's a crack, like I had to front. To me, it felt like a worthwhile risk. I could have been hosed on that. The the shop could have caught fire and burned up all my inventory. I mean, I have insurance, stuff like that. But I mean, like it could have been major setbacks and stuff like that. So, there's no guarantee that it's going to work, but that outside the box thinking, I think, gets you to not just where you want to be, but oftentimes different places, right? Like I said, we took it even further than I expected. And so, try to find your creative solutions in a similar way. I don't know. What do you guys think of that? Let us know in the chat. Again, these are not
Let's hear some stories.
Chatty people.
Yeah, come
Nobody
on.
wants to call. Please call us, and we're desperate for conversation. We are not. I could probably just sit here and talk to myself all day, but we don't want to do that. I don't know. I think we need Andrew, just as a pause. We may need to have a come to Jesus moment about like the time of day, because I know we limit ourselves in the engagement thing dramatically by being at the early middle of the workday for a lot of people on a Friday. Yeah. Maybe there is a better time to do this. I think
there probably is.
As a bit, yeah, there is, but making it work with all the other obligations we have for business is also the challenge to that. So, but we have so much fun doing it and stuff. Again, I think we've proven out maybe minimum viable product. Maybe it's time we invest a little bit more in this engagement in the same way. We got to put our money where our mouth is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Noon. It's lunchtime. That's right. Lunch and learn, Grant. You have a ton of thoughts too. I know you, my friend. Why you haven't called in yet? Shame on you. We love talking to Grant over at 3D Musketeers. Well, what do you think? Any more stories before we wrap up?
Oh, man. There are too many stories.
I know.
But which ones are the right ones?
Well, I don't know. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that, right? Like I said, if it sparks some creativity, if it inspires some other people, I mean, I think that's the thing. And if we're having fun, again, that's all that really matters to me. I'm just happy to be here. You know that.
Oh yeah.
And frankly, I'm just trying to survive to the next trade show, because that's like my fuel and my energy
is right there.
Oh my gosh. Not just Earth, man. There are so many other great ones. Like I really want to go to Forum Next this year, which is in Frankfurt. I really want to.
Let's go back to Earth real quick. I don't know. Who was it that was asking about getting a booth at Earth?
Mayhall, he's saying.
Yeah. Yes. So, like we launched Gloop at Earth.
That's right. That's right. You did.
Yeah. Earth. And every year we went back and we had a goal that we were going to sponsor at the next highest level we could. Right. So, the second year that Earth was there, I think we were a gold sponsor, because it was in the cards. And this year we are a platinum sponsor. Like we're like at top of the line. Like you can't really go up much further than that. And that's not necessarily to brag. It's to say like, we started at Earth as an exhibitor, and we showed our project off at the time. Yes, we were trying to raise on Kickstarter, but it was just us showing people in the community what we were. No one knew us at all.
Nope.
And once people started to, look and see, well, wait, what are you doing? This is kind of interesting. Then it started to spread. And it was literally the event that launched us. Had we not gone to Earth, our Kickstarter wouldn't have been funded successfully. Who knows if, we would have been where we are today. Like I said earlier, we didn't need the Kickstarter to fund, but we're super happy it did, because it gave us some extra capital to continue. It definitely motivated us to say, okay, hey, this is it. This is cool. This is our opportunity. We're not going to screw this up. We're going to go for it. Right. So yeah, I don't, just like you said, there's no time like the present. If you're seriously interested, just do it. Worst case is that, it'll cost you a little bit of money to either get there or set up the booth or whatever, but
hopefully you're enjoying it and going around and
the number of interactions. It's going to be worth it.
Listen,
So
I've always said like those shows are not, you can't go into it with the mindset that like I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna sell stuff and it's gonna pay for itself in that way. I mean, some people do that, but I think
yep,
that's pretty rare. And the real value is in the branding, is in the
yep,
community experience and all of that stuff. And it's long tail stuff. That, I mean, by that I mean like it's long con, baby. You gotta, it's not a con, it's the long game, right? You gotta
mm-hmm,
invest in being here, show people you're gonna be around, show up at these things the same way that if you want to be a streamer, you have to be consistent, right?
mm-hmm,
It's consistency for your brand, it's visibility for your brand. I often say that your marketing challenge when you're first getting started is not, you never have a sales problem, you have an awareness problem. You
yep,
need to get your signal out above the noise, right? You're not just going to be able to like start up a Facebook page, start up a Twitter account and all that stuff and expect everybody's going to know who you are, right? There's still
yep,
people on a daily basis. We've been around 6 years and they're like, I've never heard of Repkord before. I don't expect them to, right? And
yep,
there's tons of opportunity. Joel keeps telling me like, when are you going to get on TikTok? When are you getting on TikTok? And I'm like, I know. I know there's like whole communities out there in segments. Same thing with Instagram. I don't leverage any of that nearly as well as I
mm-hmm,
need to. But again, I'm doing the best that I can with the resources that I have available. And like your injection molding, it's like,
mm-hmm,
yes, I want to get to where I can putting out regular, videos on
yep,
YouTube and awesome photos on Insta and doing TikToks and all that stuff. I love that. I love that engagement. I love, everything
mm-hmm,
about that. I think that always pays off. That's worthy. That's worthy of your time and investment.
yep,
But yeah, you're gonna have to spend a little money to get there sometimes.
mm-hmm,
So plan on it and plan on that investment and stuff. And there's a huge world we live in where, as makers, it's expansive and it's growing every day because it covers so much stuff. We got our
yep,
start in the 3D printing specific niche of making, but
yep.
obviously there
Oh,
are
there's so
woodworking
many.
communities, there are a cosplay and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of other
All sorts
sub
of stuff.
niches and stuff, right? That fall into that category. So being a part of that. So to sum up let's go through the list of strategies that I feel like we've talked about that have served us, and some maybe that we maybe just
Mm-hmm.
kind of glossed over. But obviously the big ones are, if you don't have the money, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the ways to go about it is like you gotta use your brain. You
Yep.
gotta think about how to hustle, right? Like in terms of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what is it that I can do to get the things that I need to run my business? What are the tools out
Yep.
there? Who are the people that I can partner with? Like don't try to do it
Mm-hmm.
alone. And that doesn't necessarily mean taking on a business partner, but like get out and be in the community and
Yep.
meet other people and stimulate your brain. And who knows, you may find something that's there. You may find people that are willing to help you for very little money because they're interested. The makerspace that I was at was fantastic. There were a lot of retired engineers that were there just because it was fun,
Mm-hmm.
and they were more than willing to offer all kinds of amazing expertise simply because it was something that they want to do. They didn't necessarily want to go into business, but if you've got a specific project and you can give time and be there
Mm-hmm.
and be active, like you can leverage a lot of skill set and intelligence out there. I'm not saying be a sucker. You need to
Yep.
give back as well, right? Like you need to
Exactly.
participate as
Mm-hmm.
well. Okay, but there are ways to go about like finding resources that you may not have by being part of a community. We didn't talk about open source at all, but that's a
Oh, yeah.
huge opportunity. I
Mm-hmm.
always talk about being built on the shoulders of giants, right? Like
Yep.
there are tons of companies and that are out there that would not be where they are were it not for the open source community, right?
Yep.
Prusa got its start in the open source community. There's been some controversy around some people that may not be doing that appropriately. And by that, I mean, like, they're not abiding by terms of
Yep.
licensing and stuff like that. So obviously, do your research, be a good citizen in these communities, give back to these communities. But synergy is real, guys. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think that leveraging past expertise, not trying to reinvent the wheel, all of these
Mm-hmm.
things are what you need to be thinking as a maker to really kind of get to the next level. Even if you don't want to do a business, if you want to just like
Yep.
get your designs to the next level. Same, I think,
Yep.
same kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Those are the things you need to be thinking about. What else have I forgotten? Other strategy. Oh, you mentioned a good one. Finding grant funding out there
Grant
and
funding,
programs.
local competitions, leveraging local networking events. If you're a maker and you're building stuff that's local, there are probably, again, local either meetups or again, networking events that you can go to, craft shows, craft fairs, those sorts
Right,
of things.
right.
um just
Go
it
where
start
the
there's no
makers
there's no
are. Yeah.
yeah, there's no harm in starting very small, and there's no harm in taking some risks either too.
Yep.
So
Yep. We got to do it. I mean, it's not,
mhm.
you're going to have, nothing. Ideas, I like to say, are worth zero. Absolutely zero.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
execution that is worth something. And so
Yep.
when you can combine a great idea with good execution, that's a winning thing. And that's where you need to be
Mhm.
thinking. One last thing I thought of, it's somewhat antiquated, but a lot of you may not realize you have a fantastic resource where you live oftentimes. Your local chamber of commerce is a fantastic starting
Mhm.
point, because even if there aren't chamber members that are specific to what you're doing, the people that run those things are very plugged in the community
Yes.
and know. They're like, oh, you need to go talk to so and so, or oh, you're into leather work. Have you talked to this? And a lot of successful companies out there are run by people like us that want to see
Mhm.
other people succeed. I know that we
Yep.
talk a lot about the fear of competition and wanting to keep things closer. But yes, those people exist out there, and yes, that is a
Mhm.
strategy. But I am much more of a like, we will get much further working together than
Mhm.
doing the proprietary thing. That's just my jam. Again, everybody has different.
Yep.
Some people are way more into patents and, like I said, trade secrets, keeping stuff, and there's a balance for all that thing. But the
Mhm.
point is, it's the people that you meet, it's the networking that will ultimately lead you down a path that you will never come up with on your own. Um,
Mhm.
uh, you can spend your entire life just sitting by yourself trying to think of stuff and never stimulate the parts of your brain that you will
Yep.
by being a we are social creatures, guys. Like, and I know that
Yes.
doesn't come easy, especially to a lot of people in this space. I think there's a lot more introversion sometimes, and so finding extroverted makers and stuff like that are willing to communicate and share is not always the easiest thing. But I talk to
Mhm.
people all the time at Murph and stuff that say like, I need these things because I need to flex that part of my body that I don't
Yep.
normally, right?
Yep.
Like, it is hard for me to get out and talk to people. I have anxiety. I have that, but challenge yourself, confront that,
Mhm.
because it will lead to just amazing things. Okay.
Yes.
Uh, that's a lot. I'm sorry if I got up on the soapbox too much and
I think it's great. I think
proselytizing
it's
or
great.
whatever, but I hope that's of use to you guys. As always, we like to disclaim, we don't pretend to have it all figured out. We're just
No.
sharing some stuff that's worked for us, and the road is still fraught and perilous, and who knows, it could all fold tomorrow, right, Andrew? It could all come tumbling down
It,
tomorrow.
it, it literally can.
But I'll tell
Yes.
you what, I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
Um, as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I think this is a great place to wrap. We look forward to doing it again next week. Next week, maybe a special one,
Yeah.
because my buddy here is coming out to visit, and so we may do one live and in person together. So I
Yeah.
gotta think about where we're gonna set that up, but that should be fun, right? Like in the
That should be
flesh,
fun.
in the flesh
Yeah.
edition, and we'll tweet out what the subject matter is. But we hope to catch you guys on another one soon, and we've got to get back to getting our guest list together. I see Courtney, thank you for joining us. I haven't forgotten.
Mhm.
I'll reach out. We really want to have you on, talk about filament stories,
Mhm.
business success, and there've been some other people that I'm excited to have in future episodes. So tune in for that, and we will hopefully catch you on another one. Until then, keep on making, and we love you all. Have a great weekend,
See ya,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye bye. And we are.